Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And we have a return guest that's probably not going to be a stranger to the show. We want to bring him back on a regular basis, and that's Keith Reynolds, entrepreneur, technology-savvy person, and also someone that kind of has a great overview on how one thing leads to another in terms of innovation, leads to certain outcomes. So, Mr. Reynolds, welcome to Carnivore Radio.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on the show again. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, one thing that is very interesting that you're really kind of pushing is the Stanford Innovation Fair. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is the third year for Stanford Innovation Week, and we've been holding it in the fall. Last year we had over 3,000 people involved. We're pushing for that many or more, although it's all digital this year.
It's all digital. You know, and that kind of leads us into how things have changed and how they may never be the same in the business and social world. I'm going to throw it out to you, Keith.
Well, you know, some of our great advances were born in tough times. And there's a real movement here in Connecticut to really show off the talent we have in the state. And I've been involved in Innovation Week for 3 years. It's a summit that attracts global talent. Also, some of the talent here we have in the state that is global talent. So we're really working to get the startup communities and the corporate innovation communities to come out and mix it up. We've got fintech and digital media in the Fairfield County area. A lot of people commute into Stanford and Greater Stanford from New York to work up in Connecticut. Now, it's Stanford used to be a bedroom community, and now there's more people that commute in to Stanford than leave to go to New York City. So there's a lot of unknown talent within the city, and we haven't had typically a culture of getting people to come out from their work and do things like a festival, along the lines of South by Southwest. So 3 years ago, we picked up on a program that had run at the Stanford Innovation Center until it closed, called Technology Week, and we turned it into Innovation Week. And this year we've got, again, UConn is a big supporter of this. The Worth Institute is holding a program on September 21st on best practices in mentoring and leadership. We have an Innovation and Tech Conference from September 24th and 25th. And then on the evening of the 25th, the Stanford Town Center is going to have a drive-through art and music festival. And basically you'll enter the garage of the mall and drive through and see art exhibits, video, walls, and music in an immersive experience. And then finally, we're doing Startup Weekend on the 25th through the 27th, and it'll be all virtual this year. The program will put together teams of people, and they'll work on coming up with a business plan, and they'll be judged at the end. So
one question before I throw it out to Dr.
Yeah.
Lopkin is, I know it seems like a long time and may actually be, but you say you started this, or you kind of took control 3 years ago. How have people adjusted now? They want to get their businesses out there. They want to get, attention. How have people adjusted in the new way of the world with coronavirus? I know the event is virtual. That's one big thing. But how have they been flexible enough to deal with this?
Well, one of the things that I've seen, I work with a co-working space, and it's called Haven. It's in Darien, Connecticut. And we are seeing people needing to come out of the house to work. Between having two spouses working and kids going to school from home, co-working spaces are really marketing themselves as a safe place, a safe alternative to a home office. There's been tens of thousands of people move up from New York City into Fairfield County and surrounding areas, I think even pushing further north into Connecticut towns. The influx has been incredible, and home sales have been going crazy. And we have a realty firm in the co-working space, and I've chatted with them a bit. And people are looking at adding another bedroom to a house that you needed one extra bedroom for one home office. Now with two people working at home and kids going to school, maybe a second office. And then they're doing the calculus of, well, maybe it's better to just have one home office and a place outside that's very safe. I think people are making all kinds of lifestyle changes, and then they're also doing business through the glass. We touched on this last time I was on the show, where they're networking through LinkedIn, and they're doing job search online. And I talked to a recruiter this week on an assignment, and she's involved with helping companies bring talent on board and onboarding employees, in some markets that are still growing, or at least hiring. You're now having to onboard employees from recruiting to bringing them full circle to be an employee. Everything's being done, on the laptop. So I think marketing and sales are having similar kinds of experiences where you can get out and meet people through events like Stanford Innovation Week. Many organizations that have annual events are putting them online this year. And the software is available, and we have the telecom infrastructure to support it. It was very interesting. For about 6 weeks, we had a really hard time in the early stages of COVID with bandwidth issues. And about 6 weeks into it, it started getting better. So it was interesting to see how quickly the telecom providers could light up additional traffic to accommodate people working from home and doing video, no less. So lots of changes going on, but I think people are adapting.
Dr. Lopkin.
Before I chime in, I want to remind our guests that you can call in and be part of the conversation at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693. And, I think it's very appropriate that we have this conversation about innovation going on in Stamford today, of all days, being September 11th, because the fact of the matter is September 11th actually marked the beginning of companies starting to relocate to Stamford, away from New York, away from Boston, because it was a middle ground, so to speak, away from the major cities, and yet still close enough that they didn't have to hire new people. People could commute there. And now, 19 years later, we've seen Stamford become an innovation center with festivals like this. And now we're seeing changes that had started even going all the way back then, really accelerate thanks to COVID.
Yeah, I would agree with that. COVID didn't create the changes; it accelerated them.
Now, a question I have to ask in terms of overall, New York City, real estate values are plummeting. Do you think it'll ever be the same, or do you think this is a short-term kind of scenario? I have my own opinions, but I'll leave it to you, Keith, first.
Well, we touched on that last time I was on the show. It looks like occupancy rates are, at least in the office, are taking quite a hit, but it's not disastrous. It's 15 to 25%, depending on where you read and what exactly you're talking about. It certainly is a painful time for commercial and residential landlords, but I have faith that it's going to come back. I think you'll see some conversion of commercial space into residential space, but I think people, look at Hong Kong. They've dealt with multiple public health crises. Like this is brand new for us, so it's uncharted territory. But people, Hong Kong continued to thrive up until this latest version, after having gone through it already. So. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think any of us has the answer. We'll have to watch it. But this ability, another dynamic is that this ability to get online and do a conference like we're doing allows us to draw a global audience. So, we're seeing people register from other states already that wouldn't have ever considered coming to Innovation Week. But you look at the talent that's presenting, and there's people that are interested. And I think that's the same for any business. Even a restaurant can start giving cooking lessons out of their kitchen, and use the space that might otherwise go unused during the day or in the morning, and find other ways to make revenue, so off their sunk cost in their property. So lots of opportunity to start rethinking who is your customer, what services do you offer, by leveraging technology.
Yeah, there have been a lot of businesses that have shifted their business models, restaurants especially, offering groceries, offering cooking lessons online through YouTube and Zoom. So they've really been looking at new innovation to change their models and stay in business. Unfortunately, there are a lot of restaurants especially that are taking a hit. And there was a story that came out just this week talking about the fact that Manhattan has now hit a record low occupancy in terms of residency, with something like 57 million empty apartments, which is absolutely amazing.
Heard that.
However, I'm sorry, I
57,000.
Thousand, yes. I'm sorry. I just replayed that in my head, going, I didn't say that right. No, 57,000.
Bigger than the city.
Empty apartments.
That's still
I was
huge.
looking at a different number. It's a record low occupancy. However, as a longtime New Yorker, I grew up in New York. I lived there most of my life. Realistically, even though the numbers are this bad, it's not all that different from what the city went through in the 70s. You saw white flight, people leaving the city as crime went up. You had huge lack of occupancy, but ultimately it did come back. And it's all about, first of all, time has to pass and people have to forget that, oh my God, things were so bad. So once we have a vaccine and things start to return to some semblance of normalcy, New York will start to come back. But
Yep.
will it come back to where its heights were? That we don't know, because, again, you don't need to live in New York City anymore to be an employee of a major company, because you can
I think that's
telecommute.
not going, gentlemen, I don't think that's going away. I really do believe. Now, I agree with Dr. Lopkin. New York will come back to some degree, but I believe telecommuting is here to stay.
Oh, absolutely. There have already been a number of major corporations that have announced that even when the pandemic is over, they will allow people to work from home and telecommute. And Facebook and Google, two of the most technologically advanced companies on the planet, said they're not even thinking about bringing people back to their offices until July 2021.
And that's even
Interesting.
So
we're up against a break, I believe, Dr. Lopkin.
Yes, Kevin, hold on to that thought for a moment. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sure.
To reach the next level, you need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And remember, if you want to be part of the conversation, you can call us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693.
Mr. Reynolds, I have a question for you, because we have many people that listen to our podcast that want self-improvement, want to get better, get the edge. We talked about companies to some degree. Are there any lessons for people in this that may want that edge going forward? Is there anything that they can take away in terms of how do I become the 21st century plus employee?
Well, attend Stanford Innovation Week. That's a great way to start. Thank you. I say that jokingly, but also seriously. Thank you for the setup. But we're running on 5 themes this year: surviving, then thriving; pivots, planning, and strategy; leadership in uncertain times; social justice, inclusion, and diversity; and hiring and retaining top talent. And we were talking about the real estate industry and where people are going to want to live. It'll be very interesting to see who comes back and wants to live in a place. You really are able in so many service-oriented jobs to disaggregate where you live from where you work. And so being able to have a grasp on these 5 topics really sets you up for success. And success in today's economy is all about being able to relearn and retrain and reskill yourself, because technology and jobs and processes change so quickly.
It's funny, before I throw it out to Dr. Lopkin, is a long time ago when Dr. Lopkin and I had the Business Buzz show. Even back then, we were talking about the worst thing you can be is the 30-year employee of the Aetna doing the same thing and never updating your skills. I would have to believe, Mr. Reynolds, that right now, that's, and not even just with the pandemic, but over the last couple of years, that's a hyper situation.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's spot on.
Yeah, it's so important to keep your skills up to date. And ironically, because of COVID, it's actually easier for people to do that, because there are now more and more lessons and classes online that you can watch through Zoom, watch on demand on YouTube. It's become easier to bring your skills up to date.
That's a really interesting point. You've got online services like Linda and I'm drawing a blank on the other.
It's completely amazing. Yes.
Yep.
Linda's awesome.
You can get an overview of many things on YouTube for free. You can use services like Linda, there's plenty of training. The other thing too is if you're an employee and you have a skill, it's not that hard to set up a course on Coursera or some of these other training platforms. So you not only can absorb new skills, but when you have skills, you can teach others, and there's no better way to keep your skills honed than to put a class together to teach others.
One thing I want to probe on a little bit before I throw it out to Dr. Lopkin, you're talking about, social empathy, social inclusion, diversity. How important is that going forward for not only companies that want to be successful, but established companies that want to continue to be successful?
I think it's, driven by these large social forces, some of the recognitions of how we can improve as a society, taking root, and in large part driven by young people. They want to be in an inclusive. They're colorblind. Many kids today aren't putting up for the same status quo that we've had in our society, and so employers that want to have a steady stream of talent are going to have to, for survival, make their environment both from an internal workplace but also an external marketing perspective. You're going to have to bring more empathy into the way that we do business, and we're going to have to segment our markets and our products to create the kind of companies that people want to work for.
Dr. Lopkin, your comments?
Yeah, diversity is very important. It actually goes beyond empathy. If you take a look at the results of stock markets, there are funds that focus on companies that have more diverse C-suites. And you see that those companies actually perform better because the big mistake so many companies make is they hire people that are just like themselves, so they don't have that diversity of opinions. And you need people that are bringing new ideas and different backgrounds, and that actually helps boost the level of conversation in the C-suite and ultimately helps the results of the company. Now, the offshoot of that is that you can't go after diversity for diversity's sake. Having a diverse workforce, having a diverse C-suite still means that you have to hire the best people possible. It's just you have to remove the idea that the best people are just like you.
Keith,
in
comment?
essence, you've increased your pool, right? I mean, the mentality of diversity and inclusion gives you bigger and better opportunities, and you've got to see the world through that lens to succeed in the future, I believe.
Exactly.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's interesting you say that let's just say the younger people, I think, Keith, you were talking about that. That's the prime market. If you're not in touch with that, being in touch with 60-year-olds ain't going to float the boat. So if you're not talking the same language that younger people are, adhering to, then you're kind of missing the boat, aren't you, gentlemen?
It's so fascinating that the people over 60 hold all of the assets, right? They're the owners of wealth, but it's the younger people that drive the cultural awareness of our society. And
that's an interesting dynamic because that's something that's only happened over the last 30 years. It used to be younger people had the ideas and the money, but it's very interesting now, and Dr. Lopkin, I'll throw it out to you, that older people may not have the ideas but have the money. Interesting marketing dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, you're seeing a major split demographically. And it's one of the reasons that, when you're targeting markets, things like that, you really have to go beyond demographics. But you have the baby boomers who, up until the millennial generation, were the largest generation. They're now retiring. They have the assets from their retirement, but
which may never happen again.
Right, it may never happen again, but they've also just seen major economic upheaval over the last 15 years. So they have the assets, but they're not spending willy-nilly. On the other hand, you have the millennials who individually don't have many assets, but collectively, because of the size of the population, do have assets. It's just spread out, and it's a very different generation. You're talking about people who grew up online, are much more used to computers and technology, and they saw, their parents not necessarily all that happy about job situations. That's why Keith mentioned earlier co-working spaces. Co-working spaces are popping up all over the country because it gives a different way of working. But more than that, you're seeing new living spaces. There is a housing unit in South Windsor, and units like this are popping up in urban areas all over the country, and they're starting to go into suburban areas where it's an apartment complex, so everybody's got their apartment, but the complex also has common social areas, game rooms, lounges, and they have common workspaces in these areas where you can go downstairs, log onto a computer, and start working.
Yes, real quick, I know we have
her
up against a break, but being able to give Keith, a chance to really promote the Stanford Innovation situation. But I would have to say also, these millennials have seen, many baby boomers have been extremely successful, but many of them have had a lot of career upheaval, and they've noticed that. Yeah,
that's a good point, Jeff. And let's say three cheers to our youth, because in 1968, the Cultural Revolution was driven by the young people. They're now the older generation. And we have another generation that's coming up and saying, no, we don't want society to be this way. And, so three cheers to them.
Agreed.
Keith,
well,
Dr.
Lopkin,
we're just about out of time. So if people want more information about the Stanford Innovation Festival, how can they get it?
Absolutely. Well, if you're interested in the finance industry, fintech, insurance and insurtech, digital media, startups and investment, and the future of technology, go to siweek.org. That's samindigoweek.org. And we'd love to have you join us. It'll be great content. We've got amazing speakers, and they're all listed on the homepage, and you can register. There's a nominal cost to the advance tickets. You can also participate for free. If you're a student, we've got access for you. We'd love to have you join us. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today.
Well, you'll be
Fantastic.
back very soon. And Dr. Lopkin, great show. Another great show with Keith.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Carnivore Radio. You can catch us live at blogtalkradio.com/Carnivore Radio every Friday at 4. You can also catch the replays as well as Carnivore Bites at Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. We'll see you next week.